Chosen one, right now, someone is studying your every move with profound intensity, replaying your words and trying to reverse engineer the frequency you carry. It has become undeniably clear that what you do is brilliant, and many admire your courage and intelligence, even if they lack the strength to admit it to your face. You are moving with a natural, unforced power that makes others pause, realizing that you are a puzzle they simply cannot solve through conventional means. It started quietly. You felt it before you had words for it. You carried this persistent, almost irritating sense that you were tuned to something other people could not hear, not better than them, and not above them, just different, like everyone else was watching the surface of the water while you were seeing what moved underneath it. You would walk into a room and feel the full dynamic before a single word was spoken. You would meet someone and know deep in your gut, before logic had a chance to weigh in, exactly who that person was, what they were carrying, and whether they were safe, and then life would confirm it. Every single time. You told yourself you were overthinking. You shrank the signal down. You learned to second-guess your own knowing and translate your complexity into something smaller and more digestible for the people around you. Because the people around you had a way of making you feel like the strange one, the intense one, the one who needed to relax and stop reading so deeply into everything. But here is what nobody told you back then. That signal was not a glitch. It was the activation. It was the first sign that your mind, your perception, and your capacity for truth were calibrated at a level the comfortable world around you simply could not accommodate. The discomfort others felt in your presence was never about something being wrong with you. It was the friction between your frequency and their need to stay asleep. You were waking up, and awake people make sleeping people very nervous. Hold that thought, because everything that comes next is going to build on it. And then the tests came. They were never labeled as tests. They showed up disguised as relationships, as opportunities, as doors that opened and slammed shut, and as people who smiled warmly while quietly subtracting from you. For a long time you took it personally. Of course you did. The losses were real. The betrayals had names and faces. The pain was not abstract. It landed in specific places and left specific marks. But here is the revelation that reframes everything. None of it was random. Every betrayal was building your discernment. Every abandonment was building your self-reliance. Every person who gaslit you into questioning your own perception was without meaning to, and without your permission, sharpening the very clarity they were trying to dull. Every closed door redirected you away from something that would have cost you far more than it gave. Every season of isolation was not punishment. It was enrollment in the most exclusive school that exists, the one designed specifically around what you needed to learn, where no one else could take your seat. The people who tried to diminish you thought they were dealing with someone they could manage. They believed that if they made you feel small enough for long enough, you would eventually stay small. What they did not account for was what lives inside you. They did not account for the part of you that does not fold, the part that gets quieter, more focused, and more precise the more pressure gets applied. You were not being broken down, you were being refined. The fire that was supposed to finish you turned out to be the exact temperature required for what you are made of to become unbreakable. The tests were not obstacles placed in front of your story. They were the story itself. And you were passing every single one, not by escaping the difficulty, but by becoming inside it, something that difficulty can no longer touch. Now we get to the substance of it, the actual inventory of what those seasons produced. While you were going through it, you were not just surviving, you were developing capabilities that cannot be purchased, faked, or fast-tracked. You were becoming something specific, something precise, and it is time to look directly at what that is. Your pain became perception, not in a soft or generic sense, in the sharp, discerning sense of knowing a person is not safe before they finish their first sentence. You learned through experiences that demanded it, to read the signal beneath the performance. You know when someone is genuine versus strategic. You know when kindness is being used as a vehicle for control. You know when silence means peace, and when it means someone is calculating their next move. Most people spend their whole lives reacting to what is presented. You respond to what is real. Those are not the same thing. Your struggle became structure. The chaos did not just pass through you, you processed it. While everyone else was spiraling, numbing, or reaching for distraction, you were quietly asking why. Not just what happened, but what pattern it revealed, and what root it was growing from. That habit of mind, that refusal to settle for the obvious answer, is rare. It is the difference between the person who puts out the fire and the person who finds out who lit it, and why, and how to make sure it never gets lit again. Your silence became power, not passive power, loaded power, the kind that holds more meaning than speech ever could. When you finally speak, it is because you have already seen the whole picture. People feel the weight of what you chose not to say before you said a single word. They feel the difference between someone who is performing thought and someone who has genuinely arrived at a conclusion. Your words carry authority because they are backed by a depth of processing that most people never attempt. This is what those seasons were building, not a survivor, a force. If this message aligned with your purpose, hype this video so fellow chosen ones can find their confirmation. And here is something important to sit with. The world will keep trying to measure you by outcomes, by what is visible, by what is loud, by what can be held up and pointed at as proof. But the most significant thing those dark seasons produced in you is not an outcome, it is a capacity. The capacity to stay clear when everything is blurry. The capacity to remain grounded when everything around you is shaking. The capacity to see the truth of a situation and act on it, even when acting on it is costly and inconvenient and nobody in the room will thank you for it. That capacity is your real power, and it is not something you turn on for special occasions. It is the invisible infrastructure of everything that makes you different. People sense it without being able to name it. They feel the density of it. They feel the way you occupy space with a solidity that most people spend their whole lives trying to find in external things, in titles, in approval, in all the places where solidity cannot actually be found. You found it inside yourself, through the very seasons that were designed to make you believe it was not there, and now it is yours permanently, in a way that nothing external can take from you, and nothing comfortable can erode. This is what those seasons were really building, not just strength, sovereignty. What you do is brilliant, not in the way the word gets tossed around carelessly, not the passing great idea kind of brilliant, genuinely, structurally, foundationally brilliant. And the reason most people in your life have never used that word to describe you is not because it is inaccurate. It is because brilliance of your specific kind does not announce itself the way the world expects brilliance to look. The world expects brilliance to be loud and fast. It expects brilliance to arrive with visible credentials, polished presentation, and an instantly legible package that is easy to categorize and reward. Your brilliance does not operate that way, and that is precisely what makes it so formidable. Your brilliance is the kind that sits with a question long enough to find the answer underneath the answer. It is the kind that walks into a broken situation and does not patch the surface, it redraws the entire blueprint. It is the kind that reads a room so accurately and so completely that by the time you finally speak, you are naming the thing everyone was circling but could not find words for. And when you name it, the room gets still. Named truth carries a weight that performed intelligence never achieves. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of chosen one channels on YouTube have gone quiet, videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine, And when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your destiny engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. Now think about your courage, not the cinematic kind, and not the kind that belongs in a highlight reel. Think about the courage you exercised when no one was watching. Think about the moment you decided not to go back to something that was comfortable but wrong. Think about the conversation where you held a truth when staying quiet would have been so much easier. Think about the time you walked away from a role, a group, or a version of yourself that other people had invested in because it was not actually you, and you chose integrity over belonging anyway. That kind of courage does not get a standing ovation, it gets silence. It gets the confused looks of people who cannot understand why you would choose the harder thing when the easier thing was right there. But those same people went home and quietly thought about what in their own lives they have been too afraid to walk away from. You unsettled something real in them, not because you were trying to, but because you did the real thing. And the real thing is always disruptive. You do not just do brilliant things. You are brilliant in the way that actually counts, in your seeing, in your standards, and in your absolute refusal to trade depth for convenience. Your courage is not a single dramatic act. It is a permanent, daily commitment to showing up as the real thing, regardless of what any room tries to require you to shrink into. The people who tried to shrink you were performing an act of profound, unconscious self-sabotage. Every time someone called you too much, punished your clarity, gaslit your perception, or framed your gifts as liabilities, that person was doing one thing with absolute consistency, forcing you inward. And inward is exactly where your power lives. Every closed door pushed you deeper into yourself. Every room that made you feel unwelcome confirmed what part of you already knew. That room was never your destination anyway. It was just a waiting area. Every moment of rejection made your sense of self more specific. Every moment of being misread made your self-knowledge sharper. Every season of being dismissed reinforced the one thing your character needed most, the ability to stand on your own foundation rather than borrow it from someone else's opinion. The people doing the pushing thought they were winning. They believed the pressure would eventually domesticate you. What they did not account for was the part of you that does not fold under pressure, the part that focuses instead. So rather than keeping you manageable, every attempt to shrink you was quietly doing you the greatest favor of your life. The game they thought they were playing, you were never actually in it. You were building something else entirely. And what you built does not need anyone's permission to stand. There is a specific moment. You know the one. Maybe it came after a particular betrayal. Maybe it came after a long season of silence that finally forced you to sit with yourself honestly. Maybe it arrived at the end of a relationship, or at the bottom of a failure, or in the middle of a completely unremarkable day when something inside you just shifted. You looked at the version of yourself you had been performing for everyone else's comfort, and you felt something you had not felt in a long time. Done, not broken, and not defeated. Done with the performance, done with the shrinking, done with translating your magnitude into something smaller so that people who were not ready for it would not feel challenged, done with making yourself manageable for rooms that were too small for what you carry. That was the turning point of the whole story. The moment you stopped apologizing for who you are, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly and completely, everything changed. Not externally, at first, but internally. You stopped outsourcing your validation. You stopped waiting for someone else's confirmation before claiming what you already knew about yourself. You stopped holding your gifts with apology and started holding them with ownership. The way you moved changed. The decisions you made changed. The energy you extended and the energy you accepted both changed. You stopped showing up to spaces that required you to be less, and you started investing only in spaces that could receive what you actually carry. That internal shift is what the people watching you in secret are actually responding to, not your appearance and not your strategy. They are responding to the unmistakable frequency of someone who has stopped needing permission to be themselves. That is one of the rarest qualities alive, and it is magnetic in a way that no technique can replicate. Your mind works differently, not better in the ego sense, differently in a way that genuinely creates a different experience of being alive. While most people operate on the surface of a situation, what happened, how it felt, who is to blame, your mind is already several layers deep, running parallel analyses, tracking the cause behind the cause, mapping the invisible architecture of a dynamic, before most people have even registered that a dynamic exists. Most people experience events. You decode them. Because you see so much so clearly, you have also developed something that looks like restraint, but is actually precision. You stopped arguing with certain people, not because you gave up, but because you recognized that most arguments are not about the surface topic at all. They are about the wound underneath it, the ego protection, the unresolved fear the argument gives someone a socially acceptable reason to avoid. When you see that clearly enough, you understand that engaging the argument would only give it oxygen it does not deserve. So you hold your position, you hold your truth, and you let the situation reveal itself. It always does. You stopped explaining yourself to people who are not asking in good faith. You stopped needing the last word because you already know where the situation is heading, and that quiet, unshakable certainty that settled already ahead of this energy you carry is exactly what makes manipulative people nervous, because if they cannot provoke you, they cannot control you, and if they cannot control you, they have to sit with their own chaos instead of projecting it onto you. Your intelligence is not self-serving either. Most displayed intelligence is ultimately about the person wielding it, being right, looking sharp, winning the exchange. Yours is oriented toward truth. You enter conversations to understand, not to dominate. And that orientation is so disarming that even guarded people begin to open up, because something in them recognizes that you are not collecting ammunition. You are genuinely interested in what is real. You are trustworthy with the real thing. And in a world full of people who are not, that makes you extraordinary. People who are still running from their own truth feel the contrast the moment you walk in. Some move toward you, hungry for the clarity your presence offers. Others pull back, because that clarity is exactly what they cannot afford to encounter right now. Both reactions are evidence of your power. Neither one is a problem. There is something else worth naming about your intelligence, because it often goes unrecognized even by the people who benefit from it most. You have a particular gift for asking the question that unlocks everything. Not the obvious question, not the comfortable question, not the question that keeps the peace, the question that everyone else was carefully avoiding because answering it honestly would require someone to change. You ask it without fanfare. You ask it without making the person feel attacked. You simply hold the space and place the question inside it, and the room changes. Something that had been stuck begins to move. Something that had been hidden begins to surface. Something that had been avoided for a long time becomes suddenly, almost painfully, available to be dealt with. That is a specific, rare, and extraordinarily valuable form of intelligence. It is not just analytical, it is relational. It understands that the right question, asked from genuine curiosity and delivered without ego, can do more than any answer ever could. It can open a door that no amount of pushing or persuading would have budged. And you use this gift naturally, often without realizing you are doing it, because it flows directly from the core of who you are, someone who is genuinely, deeply, structurally committed to what is true, rather than what is convenient. People carry the questions you have asked them for a long time. Those questions live in their thinking, long after the conversation ended. They find themselves returning to one of your questions in quiet moments and discovering a new layer of the answer each time. That is impact. That is the kind of mark that does not fade. You are not one thing. You are not permanently soft or permanently hard, not always open or always guarded, not exclusively the fighter or exclusively the healer. You are all of it at once, in calibrated, intelligent, situationally precise proportion. When someone comes to you genuinely broken, you become the safest place they have ever stood. You do not rush people toward resolution. You do not try to fix them before they are ready. You hold space with a patience and a depth that can feel almost supernatural, because that capacity was built inside your own dark seasons. You know from the inside what it feels like to need someone to simply be present without trying to manage you or resolve you. But when someone comes at you with manipulation or hidden agenda, when someone mistakes your openness for weakness, you become something else entirely. Not cruel and not dramatic. Precise. You hold a boundary not because you are forcing it, but because you genuinely mean it. And the difference between those two things is immediately felt by anyone in the room. You leave no room for misinterpretation and no opening for the test to be run again. This duality is not a contradiction, it is mastery. Strength and softness are not opposing forces inside you. They are tools, chosen deliberately, deployed wisely, grounded always in the question of what the specific moment actually requires. Most people default to one mode for their entire lives, either perpetually accommodating or perpetually defended. You discern. You read a situation not to fit it, but to decide what it needs from you. That sophisticated, hard-won emotional intelligence is a significant part of what makes you unforgettable, not because you are easy to be around, but because you are exactly what each situation calls for. There is a particular courage that belongs to chosen ones, and it looks nothing like what the world typically celebrates. It is not the courage of the dramatic first move. It is not the courage that earns trophies or gets chanted in a room. It is quieter, harder, more sustained, more personal, and more costly than the kind that gets celebrated publicly. It is the courage of continuing to believe in what you carry when there is no external evidence yet that it matters. It is the courage of staying loyal to your vision through the long middle, that season between when you first received the vision and when the world finally catches up to it, when nothing visible is confirming that you are right and everything comfortable is suggesting you downsize. It is the courage of holding a knowing you cannot yet prove and refusing to abandon it simply because the proof has not shown up on schedule. Most people fold in that season, and it is not because they are weak. It is because the confirmation, the approval, and the external validation all follow the commitment. They do not precede it. The people who wait for confirmation before committing never give that confirmation a reason to arrive. You moved from the inside. You acted from the knowing, before the knowing was legible to anyone else. You kept moving when you were misunderstood, doubted, and told you were wrong. That is the courage of a chosen one. That specific, unglamorous, daily renewed decision to stay true to what you see, even when what you see has not yet been confirmed by anything you can point to. That same courage extends to your standards. You held standards for how you deserve to be treated, for the quality of connection worth investing in, and for the kind of work that genuinely deserves your full engagement that others found inconvenient or unrealistic. You held them anyway, not because you were inflexible, but because you understood that your standards are not personality quirks. They are the infrastructure of your purpose. The moment you lower the standards, you lower the capacity of everything being built on top of them. Some rooms did not work out because of that. Some opportunities dissolved because they required a compromise you knew would cost more than it paid. The courage those moments required was not dramatic. It was the quiet, lonely, completely internal kind that says clearly, I know what I am building, I know what it requires, and I will not trade the long game for short-term comfort. That is intelligence in its most lived form, sustained, embodied, and expressed through action, and it compounds. Every time you make the hard right choice instead of the easy wrong one, the signal in you gets stronger, your presence gets clearer, your ability to attract the right things and repel the wrong ones becomes more precise. You become proof, living, breathing, undeniable proof that the harder road is survivable and that it is absolutely worth it. You thought you were behind. It is time to address that directly. You looked at what others seemed to be building, the visible wins, the loud momentum, the apparently effortless forward motion, and you concluded, in the cruelest possible way, that you had missed something, that your trajectory was slower, that some window had closed and left you on the wrong side of it. You were not behind. You were on a different mission, and different missions require different preparation. The length of your preparation has been proportional to the weight of your purpose. You could not be handed the next level of your life before you were genuinely capable of holding it, not because you were unworthy, but because arriving before you were ready would have cost you the very thing you were being shaped to carry. Every delay installed something you were going to need. Every setback calibrated something that would otherwise have remained imprecise. Every season that felt like being forgotten was actually a season of sharpening your discernment, deepening, your foundations widening, your internal structure becoming solid enough to hold what was coming. What is built slowly and with full attention does not crack the way quickly built things crack. What you are building right now has roots deep enough to hold whatever comes next. Not because you are lucky, but because you were prepared. Not because things came easily, but because you tested your vision against reality enough times to know which parts of it are permanent truth and which parts were simply ego wearing the costume of vision. Your timeline was never behind anyone else's. It was always ahead of the version of you that had not yet done the work to receive what was waiting, and that version is no longer who you are. The admiration is not about an image. It is not a reaction to something you packaged or curated for public consumption. It is a response to the specific, rare quality of encountering someone who is fully present, not present as in attentive to the moment, but present as in fully, authentically, without a performance layer present. That quality is rare enough that most people do not have a name for it when they feel it. They simply know something is different, something is real. The courage people admire in you is not the fearless kind. It is the afraid and doing it anyway kind, the kind that feels the full weight of what the authentic choice might cost and makes it regardless. That kind of courage resonates deeply because it is recognizable. People know that weight personally. They have felt it. And when they watch you carry it without putting it down, something in them quietly recalibrates what they believe is possible for someone like themselves. The intelligence people admire in you is not the kind that makes anyone feel small. It is the kind that makes people feel more capable in their own right. When your mind works through a problem, names a truth, or connects two things that others had been looking at separately, the room does not shrink, it opens. People leave conversations with you having more access to their own thinking than when they arrived, because you model what it looks like to follow a question wherever it leads, without needing the answer to confirm what you already believed. That is a rare gift, and it radiates outward long after the conversation ends. Underneath both the courage and the intelligence is the quality that holds the whole thing together, your integrity. The seamless, unperformable alignment between what you believe, what you say, and what you do. That alignment is what makes you genuinely impossible to copy. Performances follow scripts, and scripts can always be stolen, but you are not following a script. You are the same person in every room, under every kind of pressure, whether anyone is watching or not. That consistency is not rigidity, it is wholeness, and wholeness radiates in a way that nothing performed can replicate. You are the real thing. In a world built on performance, positioning, and carefully managed presentation, you are genuinely, undeniably, unmistakably real. That is what people are watching. That is what they are quietly trying to understand. That is what they will never be able to reverse engineer, because what they are looking at is the result of every choice you made to become who you are, and making those same choices is the only way to get there. And do not underestimate what it means to be someone's reference point for what is possible. Right now, without your awareness, you are living in someone's mind as the evidence they needed. Evidence that it is possible to go through the kind of fire you went through and come out still caring, still curious, still open, still willing to try. Evidence that integrity is not just a philosophy you can admire in theory, but a way of actually living that a real person is actually doing. Evidence that you can hold your ground without losing your humanity, that you can be sharp without being cruel, that you can be powerful without being closed. That evidence matters more than you know, because the people who are watching you navigate this life are not just admiring a quality in you. Some of them are using the fact of you to justify a belief they were about to abandon. The belief that doing things the right way still matters. The belief that depth is worth the cost. The belief that who you are underneath everything is more important than what you can manufacture on the surface. You are keeping that belief alive for people who needed a reason to keep holding it. That is not something you set out to do. It is simply what happens when a person lives with enough honesty and enough courage and enough genuine commitment to their own truth that it radiates outward and becomes something other people can navigate by. You are that for someone. You have been that for more people than you realize. And the weight of that is not a burden, it is a confirmation. It is the world showing you in the most personal way possible that what you carry is real and that it matters. Everything you went through was preparation. Every test installed something you were going to need later. Every loss redirected you towards something better suited to what you actually carry. Every season of being unseen was a season of becoming more fully, more completely, more undeniably yourself. And right now, in this moment, you are carrying the full weight of everything that was built in all those seasons, carrying it with clarity, with readiness, and with the particular confidence of someone who has been tested and knows without needing anyone to confirm it that they hold. And what was built, it is brilliant, it is rare, it is rooted in something real that cannot be manufactured, imitated, or taken away. The people who tried to stop you proved it was worth stopping. The people watching you in silence know it is worth studying. And now it is time for you to live as though you know it too. Not someday. Not when the conditions are perfect. Not when enough people have finally given you permission. Now, you are not here to be discovered. You are here to lead. Not with noise but with truth. Not with performance but with presence. Not with the energy of someone who needs to be seen, but with the sovereign energy of someone who knows what they carry and has decided finally, completely and irreversibly to let the world receive it. You were chosen. You survived the choosing. You were built by everything that tried to break you, and what was built is exactly what this moment requires. Go give it to the world.